Hi guys and welcome on Cheaters and Jerks. This channel is about real life cheating stories and consequences.
I struggled against my restraints, the realization crashing down like a tidal wave. Henry wasn't moving. His breathing had stopped. I was pinned under the lifeless body of Mark's grandfather, my wrists still bound tightly to the bedposts. But let's start from the beginning, right after your subscription to this channel. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking against the cobblestones of the driveway. The sound echoed in the quiet night, making me acutely aware of my presence in this unfamiliar place. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves as I gazed up at the sprawling manor before me. It was imposing, a monument to wealth and history that seemed to loom over everything else. The windows glowed warmly against the darkness, and I could hear the faint sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from within. It was both inviting and intimidating, like a siren's call that both beckoned and warned. Mark, my husband, was already a few steps ahead of me. He hadn't even bothered to look back and make sure I was following. I watched as he shoved his hands into his pockets, his stride casual but tense. I knew he was nervous too, though he'd never admit it. "Mark," I called out softly, quickening my pace to catch up with him. "Wait up." He glanced back, his expression a mix of impatience and concern. "Sorry, Anna, let's get this over with, all right?" I nodded, falling into step beside him. This was my first time meeting his entire family, and the centerpiece of it all was his grandfather, Henry. Mark had spent the better part of the week warning me about him, his larger-than-life personality, his need for attention, and his unsettling way with women. As we approached the grand entrance, I smoothed down my dress, suddenly self-conscious. "How do I look?" I asked Mark, seeking reassurance. He barely spared me a glance. "Fine, you look fine." We stepped into the main hall, and I couldn't help but gasp. The ceiling soared high above us, adorned with intricate frescoes that seemed to dance in the golden light of an enormous chandelier. Everywhere I looked, there were people dressed in clothes that screamed old money and influence.
Before I could fully take it in, Mark was gone, swallowed up by the crowd. I stood there, feeling lost and out of place, clutching my small clutch like it was a shield.
Well, 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 you must be Anna." The voice came from behind me, rich and smooth like aged whiskey. I turned to find myself face to face with Henry himself. He was tall, impossibly elegant, in a perfectly tailored suit that emphasized his lean frame. His white hair was slicked back, and his bright blue eyes seemed to twinkle with mischief.
Yes, I'm Anna," I managed to stammer out, suddenly very aware of how dry my mouth had become.
Henry's smile widened, revealing teeth that were far too perfect to be natural. He reached out and took my hand without hesitation, his grip firm, yet oddly sensual. I felt a shiver run down my spine as his thumb brushed against my skin. "My dear, you are absolutely exquisite," he said, his voice low enough that I had to lean in slightly to hear him over the din of the party. "That dress is stunning on you. You move with such grace. It's as if you were born for nights like these."
I felt my cheeks flush at his words. "Thank you, Mr.
"Please," he interrupted, "call me Henry. We're family now, after all." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. There was something about the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room. It made me feel seen, special, and guilty for enjoying it so much. "Come," Henry said, placing his hand on the small of my back. "Let me introduce you to everyone. It's not every day we have such a beautiful addition to the family." As Henry guided me through the crowd, I couldn't help but notice how people reacted to him. Conversations paused as we passed, women's eyes followed him hungrily, and men seemed to both admire and envy him in equal measure.
We stopped at a group of elegantly dressed women, all of whom seemed to be in their 40s or 50s. "Ladies," Henry announced, "I'd like you to meet Anna, Mark's wife."
The women turned to me, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes as they assessed me. "Oh, how lovely to finally meet you," one of them said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We were beginning to think Mark had made you up." I forced a laugh, trying to hide my discomfort. "Well, here I am, in the flesh." "Indeed you are," Henry chuckled, his hand still resting on my back. And what a vision you are. Don't you agree, ladies? The women murmured their agreement, but I could see the flashes of jealousy in their eyes. I realized with a start that they were jealous of me, of the attention Henry was lavishing on me. As the evening wore on, I found my gaze constantly drawn back to Henry. He moved through the party like a shark through water, always the center of attention, always in control. I watched as he charmed everyone around him, his laughter infectious, his presence magnetic. At one point, I caught Mark watching me from across the room. His expression was unreadable, but I could sense his disapproval. I quickly looked away, guilt gnawing at me. The music changed, shifting to a sultry jazz number. I was sipping champagne near the edge of the room when I saw Henry approaching, his eyes locked on mine. My heart began to race as he drew near. "May I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand to me. I hesitated for a moment, my eyes darting around the room. I caught sight of Mark, deep in conversation with someone I didn't recognize. He wasn't even looking in my direction. I'd love to, I heard myself say, placing my hand in Henry's. As we moved to the dance floor, the crowd seemed to part for us. I could feel eyes on us, watching our every move. Henry's hand found my waist, his touch firm and confident. He pulled me close, closer than was strictly necessary for the dance. "You move beautifully," he murmured in my ear as we swayed to the music. "It's as if you were made for this." I felt a shiver run through me at his words. "Thank you," I whispered back, not trusting my voice to speak any louder.
As we danced, I became increasingly aware of how little space there was between us. Henry's hand had slid lower on my back, his fingers pressing just a little too firmly. The music swelled around us, and I found myself being drawn deeper into his orbit.
His eyes never left mine, and I felt as if I were drowning in their blue depths. The rest of the room seemed to fade away, leaving just us, the music, and the electric tension between our bodies. I knew I should pull away, put some distance between us, but the intoxicating mix of attention and attraction had dulled my inhibitions. I let myself be swept away in the moment, in the feeling of being desired, of being the center of someone's world.
As the song came to an end, Henry's lips brushed against my ear. "You're extraordinary, Anna," he whispered. "Don't let anyone ever make you feel otherwise."
With that, he stepped back, leaving me breathless and conflicted on the dance floor. I watched as he melted back into the crowd, already being pulled into another conversation, another circle of admirers. I stood there, my heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. The guilt I had been pushing aside all evening came rushing back, along with a confusing mix of excitement and shame. After the dance, Mark's blue eyes bore into me, anger etched in every line of his face. He appeared out of nowhere, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought he'd break a tooth. Before I could say a word, he latched onto my arm, his grip iron tight. "What the hell was that?" His voice, low and seething, cut through the sounds of the party. He tugged me into a dimly lit hallway, away from prying eyes.
"Ouch, Mark, you're hurting me." I tried to pull back, but his grip didn't loosen.
"What are you doing with him, Anna?" His tone became sharper, more accusatory. His frustration seeped through every word. "It was just a dance, Mark. Relax." "Relax? You were practically melting into him out there. Do you have any idea how disrespectful that was?" "Disrespectful? Oh, come on, you're overreacting." Heat rose to my face, equal parts embarrassment and defiance. My own temper began to boil. Overreacting? Now his voice was louder, words bouncing off the grandiose walls around us. "You've been flirting with my grandfather right in front of me. How do you think that makes me look?" "You know what, Mark? Maybe if you weren't so paranoid and controlling, I wouldn't feel the need to seek out someone else's attention." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. His eyes widened, not with shock, but with more anger. "Seek out someone else's attention? Are you kidding me right now? You're ruining your own evening." "No, you are, with your stupid, baseless accusations. You never trust me, Mark. You never just let me breathe." He glared at me, a muscle in his jaw ticking. Then, without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed off, leaving me alone in the hallway. my fists clenched, shoulders heaving. I took a deep breath, straightened my dress, and lifted my chin. Screw him. He could sulk all he wanted. He wasn't going to dictate how I enjoyed the night. With a determined stride, I walked back to the party. The room was still buzzing with laughter and clinking glasses, but all of it felt so distant. My eyes scanned the crowd until they found Henry. Standing near the bar, his sharp features illuminated by the chandelier's golden glow, he was watching me. Our eyes locked, and he smirked, a slow, almost predatory smile. With a subtle tilt of his head, he motioned for me to follow. My body moved on its own accord, weaving through the murmuring guests. The noise grew faint as I followed him down a quieter hallway, the atmosphere charged with a heady kind of anticipation. Ahead, an imposing double door stood ajar, light spilling softly into the shadowed corridor. Henry stepped inside, and without looking back, I followed. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, and it felt like I had crossed some forbidden threshold. The room was lavish, almost decadent. The scent of whiskey and leather mingled with something more primal, more unsettling. Henry's eyes were locked onto me, blue and intent. He moved closer until the heat of his body was palpable. His hands found my waist, his touch igniting a spark that spread through me like wildfire. "Anna," he murmured, his voice low and commanding, sending shivers down my spine. "You're trembling." "Am I?" I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. I could barely think, every sense hyper-aware of his touch. Henry's hands slid over the fabric of my dress slowly, deliberately. His grip tightened, asserting a control I was all too willing to surrender to. Every move he made was with purpose. Guiding me, he led me to the grand canopy bed and nudged me gently but firmly until I was seated on its edge. My heart raced, hammering against my ribs as anticipation built.
His fingers, nimble and experienced, reached for silken scarves, securing my wrists to the ornate headboard. The act wasn't rushed, but rather slow and deliberate, a display of control that sent a thrill racing up my spine. Henry was savoring every moment, and so was I.
With my hands bound, I felt exposed, vulnerable. Yet, there was something undeniably thrilling, almost liberating, in this surrender. I wasn't just giving in to Henry, I was giving in to a part of myself that I had kept hidden, restrained for too long. Henry's touch was both commanding and sensual, his fingers tracing lines on my skin that burned with intensity. His voice, a dark purr, rumbled in my ear, making me shiver. "You've wanted this, haven't you?"
I nodded, my breath coming in shallow, rapid gasps. Words were beyond me now. My world had narrowed to the feel of his hands on my skin, the weight of his gaze, the intoxicating mix of pleasure and submission.
As Henry's fingers continued their meticulous work, a wave of euphoria washed over me, drowning out everything but the here and now. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only this moment and the delicate, devastating power of his touch. Bound to the headboard, I felt a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos of my thoughts. Henry's dominance was enthralling, every calculated movement designed to heighten my anticipation and desire. I was his to command, and it was a thrill like no other. Time seemed to blur, every sensation magnified in the seclusion of the room. The crackle of the fire in the hearth, the whisper of the silk scarves against the wooden headboard, the barely audible hum of the music leaking from the hallway, all of it melded into a symphony of forbidden ecstasy. Henry towered over me, his demeanor one of supreme control and confidence. His hands continued their exploration, each touch making me more aware of my own need, my own craving for this break from the ordinary, from the stifling predictability of my life with Mark. In that moment, every doubt, every regret, every sense of guilt was pushed to the back of my mind. I was here, in this lavish room, bound and willing, beneath a man who knew how to command with just a touch. Nothing else mattered. Every caress, every brush of his fingertips was an unspoken promise, a tease of the pleasure that awaited. My breaths quickened, coming in shuddering gasps as his lips found the sensitive skin of my neck, trailing kisses that ignited a fire in their wake.
Anna, he murmured against my ear, his voice a dark, seductive whisper. Tell me what you want.
Everything, I breathed, almost a plea. My body arched towards him, driven by a need that bordered on desperation. He chuckled, a low, satisfied sound. Good girl. His approval was like a balm, easing away the remnants of my earlier conflict and filling the space with a heady sense of euphoria. With a final, deliberate tug on the scarves, Henry leaned in, his lips claiming mine in a kiss that was both commanding and consuming. All thoughts of Mark, of the outside world, faded into oblivion. Soon, I gave him what I didn't give for Mark. I let him visit backyard. When we were fully immersed in our illicit pleasure, time seemed suspended. Our bodies were tangled in a dance of raw desire. The moment felt surreal, almost like a dream, until the door flew open with a crash. The sound was jarring. It ripped right through the haze of lust that had clouded my mind. My head snapped toward the doorway, my heart stuttering in my chest. There stood Mark, his face drained of all color, his eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and unfiltered rage. Anna? His voice wavered, filled with the shock of someone who had just stumbled into a living nightmare. The scene he walked into was unmistakable. I was bound to the bed, my body exposed and vulnerable, while Henry, his grandfather, was moving atop me with a rhythm that screamed our betrayal. The room vibrated with the sounds of our heavy breathing and the faint creak of the bed. Mark's eyes moved from my face to our entwined bodies, and I could see him processing every horrifying detail. His fists clenched at his sides, veins bulging. I was unable to speak, unable to move, rendered helpless by the mix of searing shame and paralyzing fear. Henry paused, but didn't immediately pull away. His expression was unreadable, a mask of calculated calm, as he dared to glance back at Mark. The tension in the room was suffocating, each second stretching into a torturous eternity. Then, without warning, Henry's face contorted in pain. He clutched his chest, his movements jerking violently. My confusion quickly shifted to horror as Henry let out a strangled gasp, his body seizing uncontrollably. Henry! The scream tore from my throat, raw and panicked. Before I could fully grasp what was happening, Henry's full weight slumped forward, pressing me deeper into the bed. His sweat-slicked skin was clammy against mine, a chilling contrast to the heat of our previous actions. I struggled against my restraints, the realization crashing down like a tidal wave. Henry wasn't moving. His breathing had stopped. I was pinned under the lifeless body of Mark's grandfather, my wrists still bound tightly to the bedposts. Mark! My voice was a desperate plea. Help me, please!
Mark's face twisted in a mix of fury and anguish. He took a step back, shaking his head, as if to rid himself of this grotesque vision.
You disgust me, he spat, turning sharply and storming out of the room.
My screams followed him, echoing in the hallway, growing more desperate each passing second. Come back, Mark, please.
Only silence answered me, stretching into a void that swallowed my cries. Moments later, voices filtered through the door, Mark's among them, shouting orders I couldn't quite make out. Then the murmur of the crowd grew louder, and a swarm of party guests appeared in the doorway. Their collective gasp rose like a tidal wave, crashing down on me with the force of 1,000 judgments. My humiliation was immediate, all-consuming. I twisted against my bindings, wanting nothing more than to cover myself, but the scarves held firm, leaving me bare, exposed to their stares. Phones were pulled out, cameras flashing and piercing the dim room. I heard the whispers, sharp and cruel. Oh my God, did you see that? Disgusting. What a whore. Laughter, accusations, sneers. The weight of Henry's dead body pressed down on me, a macabre symbol of my shame, trapping me in every possible sense. Finally, someone, an older man with a look of sympathy and horror, untied my wrists. Henry's body was removed, but the damage was irreversible. The party erupted into chaos, rumors spreading like wildfire. I sat on the edge of the bed, my body trembling, my mind reeling from the magnitude of what had just transpired. Mark returned briefly, his expression hard and unyielding as he collected his things. He didn't speak, didn't look at me. His eyes were cold, distant, as if he was a stranger. When he left the room, he didn't look back. The aftermath was a blur of whispers and side glances. The scandal followed me beyond the manor's walls, photos and videos from the night finding their way online. Overnight, my name became synonymous with shame. My life, as I knew it, was irreversibly destroyed by a single night of reckless abandon. I was haunted by every detail, the charisma that drew me to Henry, the intoxication of surrendering to him, and the unbearable weight of the betrayal I inflicted on Mark. The public humiliation was relentless. Every social media post, every sneer on the street, a constant reminder of my fall from grace.
The oppressive silence of the now empty room bore down on me as I sat alone, surrounded by the remnants of my poor decisions. There was no escape from the consequences, no way to undo the damage. I would forever be haunted by that night, by Henry's pull, by the intoxication of surrendering, and by the unbearable weight of betrayal and disgrace.
Hey everyone, if you found this story gripping and want more jaw-dropping tales, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you're always in the loop.